Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pastikas. I'm so glad you're here. With the Brave Women at Work podcast, you'll get the resources and tips along with real-world stories and humor to empower and inspire you to take bolder and braver actions in your career and life. Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pastikas. I'm so glad you're here. Well, hey everyone, how are you doing out there? So when I grew up in corporate, I was taught the following. Leave your baggage at the door. Fake it until you make it. Suck it up, buttercup. Do you feel me? Have you thought or felt these things? And when I kind of was raised corporately with these things, as a result, as an employee, and then eventually as a manager, I thought you had to divorce your emotions and personal life from your work life as soon as you stepped right in the front door of your office or your work environment. And what I've learned over time is that I was wrong, like all caps wrong if you're watching YouTube with a capital W. I have managed and led so many people over the years and learned that you have to manage to the person's soul. Yes, you heard me right. I'm going into the woo. You manage the whole person. You manage the total person, and that includes their personal life, their professional life, their soul, their dreams, their fears, all of the things, not just their productivity or their work persona. So we as leaders, we need to show up authentically and treat our employees as the capable adults that they are. We have to look at them as whole people. And my guest today, Andrea Wanerstrand, is aligned with me in my perspective. So during today's conversation, Andrea and I chatted about what does an A3 culture mean? So this is branded right to Andrea and her company. She calls it the A3 culture. I find it fascinating. So what does it mean? And what are the key features of that culture type? How we can navigate our emotions at work, the barriers that prevent people from being real and authentic at the job, the 5 conversations toolbox. I love me a good tool or a toolbox, so listen into that one. Advice that Andrea would give to a leader that struggles with empathy and authority. So like I said, I was on the authority train, but I totally forgot and had to come back around and pick up my empathy chip as I got further along in my career. And how we can take our teams from dependent on us to autonomous. And I have done this and it's fabulous because it frees up my time and allows me to not be with my people all the time. They can do great work without me. In fact, probably even better work without me in their way. So here is more about Andrea. Andrea Wanerstrand is a leadership strategist, executive coach, and cultural transformation expert with over 25 years inside the world's most complex organizations, including Microsoft, Meta, T-Mobile, and Hitachi. As the founder and CEO of A3 Culture Lab, and the creator of Mindset Maven Method, Andrea helps leaders make bold shifts from control to connection, performance to presence, and burnout to bold cultural influence. Andrea has designed and led transformational programs in performance management, leadership development, and coaching, impacting leaders across over 100 countries. Her A3 philosophy, which we dive in today's show, authentic, autonomous, and accountable, is the foundation of her mission to build extraordinary, human-centric workplaces where people actually thrive. Through her work, Andrea blends neuroscience, behavioral strategy, and straight-up clarity to drive powerful change in how leaders lead and how people feel at work. Her message is simple but disruptive. Culture doesn't start with a handbook. Can I get an amen in the back? It starts with how leaders show up. And when leaders get that right, everything changes. When she's not on stage speaking or coaching leaders on reshaping the future of work, Andrea's on her lavender farm. Doesn't that sound fabulous? On Maury, I hope I'm saying that correct, Island, just outside the city of Seattle, swapping corporate chaos for clarity and intention. Oh, doesn't that sound, and just like you can smell lavender right now. She and her partner are avid boaters, exploring the islands of the Salish Sea on their Nordic tugboat. Wow. So, if Brave Woman at Work has helped you personally or professionally, please be sure to share it with a friend, colleague, or family member. And like I always say, the ratings and reviews, they matter. I wish they didn't, but they do. So if you've already left a rating and review, I thank you. You've made my whole day. You've really inspired me to keep going with the podcast. And if you haven't, take just a few minutes and leave that rating and review in Apple Podcasts. If you haven't downloaded any of my freebies, go and get one or all three of them at my website. The three are 24 career and leadership affirmations, 5 ways to managing your imposter syndrome, and getting paid 10 negotiation tips. You can get those freebies at bravewomenatwork.com. One final announcement, we are looking for one solo author who would like to be part of the next cohort of Brave Women at Work. And this one is going to be on authenticity, which is perfect for today's conversation. So it's going to be Brave Women at Work Lessons in Authenticity. The cohort is going to be starting in August of 2025. And then the ebook is going to launch in April of 2026. Yes, 2026. And the hardcover is slated for June of 2026. So let me just tell you, if this has been on your heart, this has been a burning dream of yours, my colleague and I, my partner, Hope Mueller of Hunter Street Press, and I are your women to make that a reality. You do not need to be a professional writer. We help you through the process from end to end. We teach you publication, the writing process, the editing process, and then I help on the marketing train to get us to Amazon bestseller. So if it has been a dream of yours on your heart, please don't let it hang out there. Email me at hello@bravewomenatwork.com. That is my calling card. Again, hello@bravewomenatwork.com. Would love to chat with you more about it. Okay, let's welcome Andrea to the show. Well, hello, Andrea. Welcome to Brave Women at Work. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Jen. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to dive in. So, everybody, when you missed some good stuff like before we hit record. So, Andrea, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, where you are, maybe even share a little about where you are in the world and what's been up with you lately. Love to hear, a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I am located in the upper left corner of the United States, off the coast of Seattle in a little island called Maury Island. My husband and I left the city 3 years ago and bought a farm. It was a pig farm at the time, and pigs went away. And so we have converted it with some of the acreage to a lavender farm. I love lavender oil. I've used it as a biohack for years for my insomnia. And we were like, what are we going to do with this land? We're ferry served, so you can only get here by either water taxi to downtown Seattle or by a car. So everything we do here is intentional. You never leave the island unless you have 3 errands to run in the city to make sure you optimize that ferry cost. But it is a different pace of life, but we do have internet because obviously I'm here with you today. So, that said, I'm coaching, I am speaking, and I'm having the time of my life having great conversations like I'm having with you today.
Oh, that's so cool. So, do you ever get like a little, I have to ask about the island, right? So, I just was in Aruba, like, oh, poor me, right? I was in Aruba. It's beautiful there. We were on vacation, my family and I. But, I get a little stir crazy after a few days, and I was just wondering, you intentionally move there. So, do you get that kind of stir craziness or no? Like you really love, like you said, the slower pace of life. You love what the island has to offer.
So, on a Tuesday night when I want takeout and there's maybe like a random couple of places open, I am really craving that delivery service that I was used to for 25 years. And it's funny, we say it's a slower pace of life, but land management and managing a property, whether you have a farm or not, is a thing. And so there's always a to-do list. Actually, we have to be intentional to like take a break and just like go down to the beach and take a walk. So no, I do get stir crazy, but we have a water taxi. I intentionally chose this because we're close enough to the city that I can go in and see a show, have dinner with my son, all of the above. But then I can come back here and just kind of get that
Yeah.
calmness that we have.
Okay, well, let's stay in touch because I want to, if you eventually ship, lavender oil to other parts of the US, like I would love to purchase because I'm trying to get back into essential oils. And you and I had talked about I'm in full on perimenopause. Yay. So like I could use some lavender myself. So yeah, let me know when you're ready for that. Would love to help sponsor and support your business.
We're about a year out. We're going to do our first distillation. It's very chitty chitty bang bang, if you know that old movie.
Yes.
That we have this device that we distill the oil. And right now we've got about 1,000 plants, think a football field, and there'll be more coming next year. Hopefully next year we'll also open to the public for a few weeks in the summer.
Oh,
So
really, really fun. Really, really fun. So why don't we talk about you have something called A3 or A3 culture and really fascinated by your work. And so just kind of wanted to know before we start talking about what an A3 culture is, like what prompted you to get into this line of work?
well, over the last 20 years, I've had the honor and sometimes the stress, I don't know which category to put it in, of running the performance management programs, both at T-Mobile in the US and then across Microsoft globally. And then I've been in leadership development, manager capabilities over the course of the last 20 years and hard conversations, managers that
Mm.
actually make it. What is the stat, like going from a manager to a director and moving up in an organization, there's like over a 65% failure rate. And it's part of it is they
Wow.
don't teach you. I think that's Gartner. I I'm close with my stats, but I wouldn't use it as scientific fact.
Yeah.
The but I've actually seen it in action. The idea of leading through others and the shadow that we as leaders and influential individuals and organizations, you don't have to be a titled leader to actually impact the culture that you're in. And I define culture as the essence of how things get done. So
Mm.
how things are handled, in particular, when mistakes, not if mistakes happen, but when mistakes happen, how are those handled? What is the open communications like? And so if the how is done in a way that increases stress for everyone, it really, creates a culture that is toxic, for lack of better word.
Mm.
And so for me, I have seen it all, the good, the bad, the ugly. You can't surprise me on what a manager may do in all the companies that I've ever worked in. And I really wanted to get to the heart of it. What's driving that? And it comes down to us as humans. And us humans often feeling like we're not enough. We
Mm.
don't we're not good enough. We shouldn't be here. Imposter syndrome's one of them. But it's this primal fear. We have an instinct for stability, but the world is not stable and we're not always adapting to change. And so that's where those toxic behaviors can be rooted, just because we're simply human.
Okay, so first of all, I'm still shocked, and I know it's not like the final stat, but I've never heard that. You said you think it's from Gartner that 65% that go from like maybe a senior manager to a director fail. So you may not know this, but now I'm even curious. I'll go look this up, report back to everybody what the percentage is from like a director to a VP or a VP to C-suite, what the failure ratio is. So I'm assuming does it get higher and more like kind of, the bar is raised on that failure, or no, once you get past director, like you're in and you can keep, moving forward as a leader.
I would say it depends on the organization. Here's the thing. Often we are promoting from an individual contributor to management based on how that person's executed the job, not in how they've led others to do a job. So that is a major shift. If, as a manager, you're still doing individual contributor work, i.e., you do work and execute work, not just guide others to do work, when you move to director, you're now often managing through others, right? You're not doing the work, you're guiding the work, setting the strategy. It's not to say you don't do work, but
Right.
you're not doing tactical execution. The higher in the organization you go, you're having to hone your skills of influence, which requires high emotional intelligence to understand the emotions and perspectives of others, and getting things done through others rather than yourself. And so that's where the challenge lies, is as we move up in the organization, how do we hold a sphere of influence? Many use a stick as the proverbial way
Yes.
of doing it, command and control. Others are very charismatic, but the most successful ones are able to have a consistent presence and be able to set the vision to make people want to be engaged and want to be working towards the goal. So, yes, blanket answer, it does get harder as you move up, but by the time you're getting to that VP C-suite, the numbers have dwindled down and you're being
Mm,
honed more for that. It's often more when we see leadership development and executive coaching come into play.
yes.
What I've loved to see in the last, 5 to 8 years is what's called the democratization of coaching, in the aspect that professional coaches in many organizations, such as a Microsoft's and Spotify's and all these companies, is that they're offering it up for non managerial roles. Bear's been doing this with the big effort that they've had in, quote, removing the middle managers, but it's actually their decentralization and what they're doing to increase autonomy and ownership. So we haven't learned till later or put the support in till later, but that transition point in career from doing the work to oversight of the work is where people stumble.
Okay, this is so fascinating for me. So let's go into your term A3 culture. What is an A3 culture? What are those three cultural principles as part of it?
Yeah. So if we agree that the essence of a culture is how things are done,
Mm-hmm.
the A3 stands for authenticity, autonomy, and accountability. You can
Mm-hmm.
have accountability without autonomy and without authenticity. But the key one here is authenticity. And I don't mean like oversharing and like, everything that happens in your life that you're authentically sharing. But as a leader, how are you showing up in a way that is consistent, that fosters the outcomes that you want, does not increase stress in the organization? So we can say consistently, there used to be a lot of old movies where the boss comes in and they're
Mm-hmm.
ringing each other on the elevator because he's coming up in the elevator and everybody scrambles and it looks like they're working. That's not what I mean
Yeah.
by consistent. What I mean by consistent is this ability for us to have a steady presence, even though we might be upset when something goes wrong. But if we are reactive, we're having a hard time with our own emotions. How do we help others? So authentic is a consistent presence, because when we fake it till you make it, which doesn't work, by the way, we're being performative. We're actors on a stage. And when we fall, not if we fall, and it might be a stumble, it might not be a full flat on your face fall, it's harder to build trust. And we as humans can read through when somebody's being a little phony. Folks don't like to say it. They're saying, I'm having executive presence. But the reality is if you're wearing a mask, that mask will crack at some point. So I challenge that it's easier to be authentic, own your mistakes, own your decisions, and be kind. Now, I want you to be kind as being courageous and looking at growth and telling the truth, rather than also the mask of niceness. Everybody, like, there's can be a herd of elephants in the room when folks are putting on the mask of niceness, and everybody's dancing around it and the tension's increasing. So
Hmm.
authenticity is really being consistent to your values and to yourself, and really having an idea of how do I want to make other people feel after they've interacted with me.
You've made me realize something. So I'm an executive and leadership coach outside of here through Brave Women at Work. I know that you do similar work as well, probably on more of the corporate and maybe individual side. And I believe, and I'm also, just to make it a little more interesting, I've been in corporate and still I'm in corporate for 25 years. So that makes me kind of interesting, right? Like an interesting unicorn that I'm doing this work and also have a team. I have a direct management team of about 6 to 7, and then I have 62 people in my group. And I
Hmm.
will tell you that it's almost like I've become a better leader by actually doing coaching and going and doing this work and this self reflective work. And I think it's because I have done some of the like snarled work of working with my own imposter syndrome, understanding when I'm triggered. Like we're going to talk about emotions in a minute. What do you think about that? Because I'm like, man, like if other people had that level of curiosity as leaders, I think we all probably would have a higher level of leadership in our organizations.
Yeah, and what you've been talking about is self-awareness, right?
Hmm.
You understand when you're going to various states, what might trigger you into being a bit reactive, which will touch on emotions. So the authenticity is increasing your self-awareness, which is a journey. It's not a destination. You're not all of a sudden self-aware. We all think we're self-aware, but we're always learning because our comfort zones change, right? We always learn to a new comfort zone. The leader that can truly be authentic is confident in the face of ambiguity because they know that they're going out of their comfort zone, which is where growth happens, and they're going to be able to navigate the ambiguity to get to the new level of comfort zone. It doesn't mean it's all, eh, comfy and like hunky dory when you're
Yeah, of
like going
course.
through it, right?
Of course.
But you're moving through it. So you're spot on in the aspect that when we've done reflective work, when we understand our emotions at work, um, and are able to regulate them in a way that is to the outcome that we want to achieve, that's when we're truly being authentic. You want to dive into emotions maybe a little bit before we go to autonomy and
Yes,
accountability, the other two?
let's do that. I actually wanted to ask you about this. So one of the questions I had, which is funny, it's like a closed question, is like I was taught not to emote at work, right? Like I will be the first one, tears in the bathroom, right? Like we don't cry in a meeting, we don't get overly emotional. So I think the baseline is it okay to express and to have emotions at work? Which is kind of a silly question, but I was raised a little more that stoic. To be with the boys, you've got to like act like a man, right? And so I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
So there is no personal you and work you. Your central nervous system, which it regulates our emotions, has not gotten any memo that we're not supposed to have emotions at work, first and foremost. Now, the other thing is, yes, crying and like excessive emotion is the opposite of regulation.
Right.
So, and your emotions are there. Emotions are in our central nervous system, they're in our subconscious. Your body is feeling an emotion before you're thinking an emotion.
Mm,
So you might get a tension in your shoulders, your breath might change, your heart rate's going up. I've actually worked with clients where I can, like, before they actually yell or cry or the emotion like literally comes out, what's the work back of the body signals that you're getting on that emotion, right?
mm,
So first and foremost, emotions are there in the workplace whether you want them to or not, because simply you are human. It's right there with breathing.
okay. So it's right there with breathing. So what are some of the best strategies you would say now that I know I can't? I wish I would have met you, I don't know, 25 years ago. So, now that I know I have to emote at work, it's just like breathing. What would be the best strategies to navigate them? Like I recently had some serious frustration. Like, stuff comes up. So how do I navigate those emotions at work?
Great question. Now, I wish I'd known it 25 years ago as well. I've had to learn this because I was never really good at this. Um, but first and foremost, acknowledging our emotions. What is really at the heart of this? Emotions are based on our memories, right? Um, Often we can be activated or triggered by a tone, a word, a smell, even, or an instance that we can call up a positive or negative emotion. right? And emotions want to get out when they're raised. I use the example, this isn't always about crying, yelling, frustration. A good belly laugh. If you get the giggles, you can't stop because there is a physical energy that just wants to emote and get out. So, how do you get to the heart of what's driving the emotion for you? And this is, again, that self-awareness journey. What is actually activating me here? Is it the person, the situation? Is it I'm not happy with myself? What is actually at the core here? And then a pause before you go into any interaction regarding anything that you know is going to have an emotional situation. The 5 minutes before a meeting, 3 minutes you can actually accomplish it into is the deep breath, because again, we need that physical grounding for ourselves and setting an intention. How do I want to navigate this? It's almost like you're choosing the command control for how you're going to interact
Mm, mm-hmm.
right before you do so. If you're in the midst of it and it's coming up, take a bio break. No human in any organization is going to deny a person a bio break. That's always the best excuse. And I have done
Mm-hmm.
more resets sitting in front of the mirror in the bathroom of the women's room and then going back into a meeting, right? So finding a moment where you can reset if necessary, and it doesn't like make it go away, but it just gets you to calm for the moment. You'll feel the emotions because again, they're going to get out whether you want them or not, but it
Mm-hmm.
allows you to have the moment of calm to navigate the best you can. If the emotion comes out and it's an after the fact, give yourself grace, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
humans and you did the best. You're not have to be the best, but the good old four agreements, one of my favorite books,
Yeah,
is
it's good.
be your do your best, right?
That's all you
And
can do. Yes.
you can. And in combination with be impeccable with your word, which is one of the four agreements, is in the self-talk that we give ourselves, right?
Okay.
So emotions are going to get out. You have to set your intentions and give yourself the grace to learn. Okay, I learned last time the emotion came out that my breath was starting to get higher or I was leaning in. Those are physical signals I'm going to look for next time so I can stop it earlier from actually getting to an escalation. That's all you can do is learn.
That's all we can do. So we talked about the emotions piece. So thank you for reminding me that yes, I will have emotion, right? I can't. And for everyone, I've tried to stuff them. Well, stuffing them doesn't work either, just before we move on to authenticity, because it's going to come out in illness. It's going to come out in burnout. It's going to come out like to your family or your kids or in the wrong directions. And so you have to feel your feelings and feel those emotions. I just I just wanted to say that because I've tried to do the opposite and just stuff them down and put that mask up, and that doesn't work either.
No, and I mean, simple underscore emotions will come out, right? They are physical energy. We are we are electrical beings. So this is where like the mind body science comes into play. And it's trailing across our central nervous system and our three brains. You have three brains. You have your head thinking brain, you have your heart brain, and your gut brain. All three centers have neurons and they're sending messages at all times. Your thinking brain's doing most of the day-to-day work, but here's the thing, your emotions sit in your subconscious, and only about 5% of what we're thinking at any point is residing in our thinking brain. 95% of our thoughts are living in the rest of our body. So our heart brain has many neurons and it sends more messages to our head brain than our head brain sends to our heart brain. So when
Hmm.
you say, you feel it in your gut or that heart connection, um, we're learning more and more around the science of intuition and what's actually happening in the chemical reactions that we're having in our body as we're having thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And we as human beings, just like breathing, cannot turn off how we feel. We will always feel something.
Hmm.
So if we know that, and men feel the same, right? This is the same for men. This is they might have been more stoic and stuffed it down, but they also had a earlier rate for life expectancy than
Yep.
women did. And they have a lot of stress that occurs in illness because of that, because stuffing it down, your body is going to try to do something with it, and it's usually chemically toxic for your body because you're creating chemicals at that point with those emotions.
Wow. Okay. So let's move to the authentic piece of the A3 culture. So, what might be some barriers that would keep us from being our authentic selves at work?
Our fears. That's the
Fears.
easiest answer, right? Or there's others that are around that you feel like you're, so fears of what you're going to be judged for, fears for not being right, not being good enough, not being whatever, fill in the blank. That is the number one thing that's our barrier. And we have to learn to trust ourselves, right? We also have to learn that it's progress over perfection.
Yes.
Perfection is a myth. And when we do show up as our authentic self, we're able to create trust. People will trust you in a way that faking it to make it and putting the mask on will never create. And in a time of crisis, or when things, when shit really hits the fan,
Yeah.
the team needs to trust in you and you need to trust in the team. And so looking at the fears, looking in the mirror and saying, what am I really worried about here? What's the worst that can happen? What's the mitigation? Multiplicity is part of us. Part of me wants to do this, part of me wants to do that. And the inner critic, there's lots of other names, but there's a part that's always wanting to protect us
Mm-hmm.
and keep us in that comfort zone of safety, no risk, no ambiguity. We've already established the world is ambiguous. We don't have 100% certainty at any time. So it's a contradictory nature to us. So when we can have conversations with ourselves about what we're concerned about, what we're afraid of, and then rationalize how we're going to mitigate that with our own inner talk and be impeccable with our word in how we do so, be kind with our word on it, we're then able to mitigate showing up not authentically. And again, I'm not talking about oversharing. I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and she's like,
Me too.
no faux crying at work, right? I mean, if you're showing, right,
I
it's
love it.
just
No faux crying.
no faux crying. So the authenticity is so critical because then you can create autonomy. People will trust you. You learn to trust others because you're letting go. And we often in companies and teams say, oh, I've empowered them. Well, have you let go enough to let them actually go forward? And have you set expectations so that when it comes time to hold them accountable, they know what their autonomy is supposed to be achieving and what your expectation is. And a lot of times I'll coach a leader and they'll say, yeah, I told them. And I go, but did you validate that what you said is what they heard?
Yeah. See, there's a piece that they missed. Yes.
Right? So, and have you taught them to be autonomous? I know a lot of leaders that have created over dependent teams. They have to go to, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on you. They have to go to Jen to get approval. I don't know if that's the case for you or not, but there's so
No.
many times you're like, no, just go do it. But,
Please.
but uh, so many leaders are like, they know what to do. Why do they keep coming to me? And it's like, you've created the base where they're going to come back and look for approval. And as we're trying to build more autonomous teams, because in order to scale these days, we're doing more with less, we've got great tools out there, we need to have autonomous team members. Well, if you've trained them or they've grown up in business, I know I had ask permission, right? Before you move forward, get approvals through the hierarchy. They will never be autonomous. So you have to set expectations, validate they understood the expectations, give them the space to be autonomous. Autonomous also doesn't mean abandonment. You don't just like, here you go forth.
Correct.
You need to be there and support them. It makes it all easier when it comes time for accountability. And that third A of my A3 culture is that ownership. of what they are actually achieving autonomously. And it's for the results, good or bad. So they own the celebration or they own the consequences of the decisions. And it's in a timely manner. That accountability needs to be an ongoing conversation, not at that formal performance review that HR might be putting into place,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it should be a reiterative, open dialogue. So the A3 themselves are just a synergetic wheel, if you will, of presence, action, and interaction with others.
I'm a pretty hands-off leader, meaning I hire what I feel pretty well. So I think I think hiring well is a balance of art and science, right? So part of it is, how do they interview and what does their, history, lineage, resume, CV look like? What are their hiring assessments? I do hiring assessments. But part of it's for me, it's gut. I'm not gonna lie. I think part of it's intuitive. Like, do I see like synergy here? Is this person gonna shore my gaps, right? Because I don't want to hire people
Mhm.
just like me. I want to have a well-rounded team. So there's a lot of
Yes.
factors that go into when I hire. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose in hiring, right? And it's not about, the manager. Sometimes people are really good interviewers. But let's say that I hire and when they get there, I'm like, I hired you for a reason and a role, and you're so valuable. And my philosophy is yes, I'm your leader, but I'm working right with you. Like I'm on the same side of the table as you are, and I trust you. And go get it done. Go get, sweating on the football field, come back. And if we have errors, like it's not a big deal. Like, I'm not in the medical field, like, and I'm not trying to be flip about this. I'm not curing cancer, right, in my day-to-day work. So I like to give them room to run and give me ideas, and I want them to do all of that. And so I have a situation where, what about an employee that you have that might be really struggling? Leader, either a leader at that level or even maybe an individual contributor, and maybe they're not self-aware and they have maybe an adversarial relationship with you because they're so plagued by their own demons, meaning they haven't done the self-reflection. How do you handle those employees? Because now you've heard my style, right?
Mhm.
And I have had situations where it's just painful to manage certain people because maybe they don't see me like that. Maybe they like twist like my words, or maybe they're like, oh, well, you're following up with me on so and so. And I'm like, well, I haven't heard from you. Like you've missed a deadline. But it becomes like twisted and toxic in their own minds. Like I'm sure you've dealt with like those kinds of folks. And I just kind of want to give them a virtual hug. But I don't know what to do with them. What do we do with those folks?
Yeah. So, as I stated, our emotions are based on our past experiences. So, if this is a new employee to you and, even new within the first year, okay,
Sure.
most of their reactions really have nothing to do with you. It's about them and how they are confident or lack of confidence more often than not in these
Yeah.
situations, and how they've interacted with previous managers. Unfortunately, you're paying the price in the reactive moment with these individuals based on all the other people they've ever interacted with in management or what they were told and how they were held accountable, and their own limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So unraveling a bit of that, if you really want to like help them change the tide, is keeping consistent with your authenticity,
Yep.
first and foremost, helping them create self-awareness by coaching them, asking them, what's going on here, and
Yep.
trying to problem solve, stay curious, don't make assumptions yourself. And make sure in every conversation when you're setting expectations that through like a coach like presence that you're able to have them validate that what you've said is what they've heard, because if they're twisting the words they're not truly listening, so you got to break it down, and
Yes.
it requires more energy. Unfortunately, it is redeemable, it is fixable, figure outable. That said, I've often seen leaders bring in coaches, and this is where that democratization
Mm,
has been so important in the coaching industry, of it not just being for the executives, because this is behavioral, right? And those behaviors are, you're seeing emotions in play, right? As they're twisting your words. So how do we help them move forward? At the end of the day, they're accountable for their own presence and execution and
yes.
performance. It is a business, and we want to have empathy. So it comes down to the organization of, is this a right fit in this hire? Hopefully you're catching it earlier on.
Yep.
Is it redeemable? Are you able to make that investment to help them turn the corner and have some increased self-awareness and shake off the baggage of the past? And are they willing to do the work? That's the magic combo. You can have
Right there.
yes to
Yep.
everything up until then, but if they're not willing to do the work, then it's not going to move forward. And that's the reality until they're ready. And it might not be in the time that you're interacting with them.
For the business. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That was super valuable for me, and I will take that wisdom and use it in my day to day work. So let's talk about that empathy authority balance, right? So I've had managers that are, I would quote unquote say hardcore, where they're a little bit more tough love. Maybe they're like, get it done now versus, that authoritarian versus that empathy. And I personally think there's a balance of both, like where you can't be all empathy, but you can't be all authority either. But what advice would you give to a leader that struggles with that balance or maybe leaning in one or the other?
Yeah, this is where I ask the question and I differentiate between being kind and being nice,
Hmm.
right? So, and the opposite of nice is the bully brute, right? So you can do a spectrum there too. I'd add that third one in there. Hopefully we're
Yes.
not being the bully brute. And hopefully we're not being super, super nice where we think we're being empathetic and, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings. But are you hurting their career? Are you hurting the business? Are you hurting the outcome that's needed here in order to move them forward? Because, yes, at the end of the day, it is a business. And then are you being kind? Is this aspect of, are you looking at the growth? Are you helping them to see clearly with increased self-awareness what the situation is and move forward? Now, when it's of personal nature, yes, we want to have empathy. When I was at Microsoft before COVID, they rolled out manager expectations, and they still have these today. It's model, coach, and care. So walk the talk, coach your team, and care for them. And there was a lot of confusion when it first rolled out about what does care mean. And
Hmm.
it's like, do I have to like throw parties? Excuse me. Do I have to throw parties? Do I have to like, do awards? What does really care look like? And
Hmm.
the chief marketing officer at the time goes, you simply have to treat them as human beings. So are you treating them in a way that helps them move forward in a personal situation? Are you using the resources that your organization has in place for health and wellness, supporting and leave as needed? Are you looking at their emotions and helping them get the job done, regardless of the personal situation that's occurring? If you can answer yes to all of that, then you're balancing empathy in a correct way. If you are somewhat enabling them to not move forward, whatever the situation is at work, you're kicking the ball down the road, if you will. So how do you balance that is really situational. Are you talking about somebody that has cancer, somebody that's going through a divorce, somebody that's, having an ornery teenager at home and they're having a bad week? All of those things require human empathy, but how are you showing up in a kind way that helps them grow, keep moving in their job, and keep the company getting what they need out of the performance in a human way that honors the growth and the situation of the individual?
That is so good. One of the things that we use at my office, my work is something called soul management. Because you're not managing just to the person's performance, you're managing to them as a person, right? To the soul
Mhm.
of the person.
Love that.
And if you don't have that relationship with them, you need to build it because they need to be able, because we spend so much time with these people, right? So, like,
Yes.
it's not like I'm trying to water cooler gossip with you or chit chat with you about every detail of your family life. But you need to have a level of trust and comfort where if they are struggling with like a divorce or a death or just like a rough morning or mental health or whatever, that they feel safe. Like there's that psychological safety enough where
100%.
they can come and be like, hey, Andrea, I'm really struggling with this. Can I have a couple hours today? Or you offer them, an EAP program or whatever they need to get through that hurdle.
100%. And this is where being authentic so that people trust you to tell you the truth. Know that you'll hold things in confidence because when we are people managers in most organizations, the business conduct is that if we know about a personal situation, it's just about that individual and that individual shared with us, and maybe it's shared with HR. That is sacred, if you will. That's a cone of silence. So often other team members don't understand why, Sally's having a bad week. That's up to Sally to share, but it's holding them accountable and having the empathy and access to be able to do that is all predicated on have you created a trusting relationship before this situation or a situation occurs.
Mm. Okay, so good. I hope everybody's taking notes on this particular podcast because there's a lot of truth bombs in here if you're a leader. And even if you're not like a quote unquote manager, I think that a lot, almost really much everything we're talking about applies because you can lead as an individual contributor. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. And this also applies whether it's at work or personal. I would
Yes.
argue that everything that we're talking about here works in your personal life, whether
A
it's your spouse, your kids, your cousin, parents are maybe a little different, but
little
it
different.
applies a little
Yeah.
different. But it's how we show up with others. And there's the old saying, they don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And that's the core truth of it all. And then when you are holding somebody else accountable, and this could be peer to peer, right? This is not just always about a direct report. If you have an expectation in collaboration with someone else, and maybe it's not even within the same company, it's a vendor, it's a customer, have you ensured that they've heard what you said and what you've committed to? Do you show up and hold yourself accountable for delivery? Do you hold them accountable for their part, with even in a customer scenario? And do they trust you? Have you created a arrangement where they trust you? And so I'd argue that this applies just in human dynamic, and not just in the workplace.
I agree. Okay, so I want to make sure if you need to share this. One of my questions was on the 5 conversation techniques toolbox. Can you quickly explain what that is?
Yeah, yeah, this is really predicated on how we show up, and it's situational leadership, if you will. Do you need to direct someone, right? Do you need to coach someone and help them move forward? Do you need to mentor someone? Mentoring and coaching are different in the aspect is mentoring sharing our scars, not our wounds, our scars. It's like, I got through this, or I know somebody who got through this, and you're going to get through this too. All of it is building confidence. Do you need to teach someone, right? If they're new to something, you try to coach them and build their confidence. They're like, I don't even know how to do this. So, in order for you to move forward in any situation, you have to choose the right technique out of your quiver in any interaction that you're doing. Because if you walk in with assumptions that they know all of this, when in fact it's something new to them and you haven't stopped to give a teaching moment and and some validation, then you're miscommunicating, right? So, how are you showing up for every situation? And it's not just be directive all the time, it's not just coach all the time. In fact, a single conversation, you're going to pull multiple techniques out of your quiver in order to have the most effective conversation. And I challenge every people manager in particular to always include coaching, even if it's as simple of ending a conversation with, "Thank you for the discussion today. I found a lot of value in it. What was most valuable for you in our time together?"
It's
And
great.
what you're doing there is you're grounding the learning, the grounding the takeaways, right? So this aspect of intertwining the different techniques in order to be able to achieve the outcome of the interaction that you're engaged in is the crux of having a really productive, effective communication.
Mm. Okay, so good. This is for me, it's so powerful. So you have a question in here, and I was like, I want to know the answer to this. So, what is your secret, Andrea? Like your personal secret to living a magnetic and energetic life?
So this is that mind-body connection, right?
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Ikigai? It's like
Yes.
the,
Yes.
the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for,
Yes.
right? And this is when you need to really get honest about your zone of genius. It isn't just what you're good at, it's what lights you up and elevates others. So I do a lot of energy audits with my clients. I challenge them, just go through the day and how are you feeling physically and emotionally throughout the day? Do you have an email that comes in and you look at it and you cringe? Do you have a meeting that you come out of and you're just like, that was awesome? Is it a coffee break with a colleague that really inspires you? Whatever that energy sequence is, helps you figure out where your energy is most positive and where you light up in life. So if you can invest your time in the areas that light you up more than those that drain you, brushing your teeth and all those kind of hygiene type activities, such as, taking out the garbage, those don't light me up, but they are necessary, right?
Kind of required, yes, for
So I'm not
humaning.
talking
Yeah.
about like utopia, but can you find a mix in your life? And I use the words portfolio life. You have a portfolio life. You do this job, you do the podcast, you do this mix of things that
Yes.
bring you some form of enjoyment or benefit. And that to me is how you live an energetic life, is knowing where your energy goes and energizing yourself through activities that light you up.
So, as we're kind of winding down here, I just heard this term recently. Someone's like, "Yeah, you have a portfolio career." I'm like, "What?" So, apparently I do. So, if you have, like a corporate career and you have a side gig or you have like more endeavors, like that's what we consider a portfolio career or life. Do you have anything else to add there? This is just a new term to me.
Yeah, there's actually it's been in the last few years. And like when folks ask me, so what do you do? And like we all associate when we're in the corporate world our titles. I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. But this idea that you can have multiple streams of incomes, even in the corporate world, maybe you have an investment portfolio, right?
Yeah.
But it's also where you find enjoyment. And so in my portfolio life, between my husband and I, we own three businesses.
Wow.
In my business, I coach. I do primarily speaking these days in organizations. I might do some team exercises. I've written a chapter in a book recently that actually got the LA Tribune
Oh,
Critical
it's
Award.
amazing. Congrats.
And so, how am I sharing from my acquired zone of genius? And not to say I am a genius, it's my zone of genius. And that said, I also drive a tractor. I own a lavender farm and
Yeah.
it feeds me. It's not a choice of being technical and or creative anymore. You can actually mix. And I do a lot of work with my clients on what is their portfolio life mix. So
That's really cool. And I didn't even know I was doing it. So I guess I'm like, in the in crowd.
You
I didn't
are, you are.
I didn't know it was happening. And someone told me like, you're building a portfolio life or a career. I'm like, oh, okay. So let's wrap this up with the question of what are 1 to 2 ways that women can be braver at work today?
Take care of you. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is look in that mirror, feel your feelings. What do I want to do today? How do I want to show up today? And take care of you in order to do that. First and
Mm-hmm.
foremost, we tend to put that on the shelf. Second of all, is aim for progress over perfection.
Mm-hmm.
We do often, I think it's a reality anywhere in the world, and I've worked on 5 continents, women have to prove themselves more. It hasn't changed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes more energy. So, in taking care of you, I would prioritize how are you spending your energy and how are you recharging your energy in order to take care of you and before you take care of everything else in the world.
Thank you. So, how can women connect with you, anyone listening, and your work online?
I am primarily on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to see some of my posts and find out about what I'm offering in my business. You can also go to a3culturelab.com, and I'm just dabbling in Instagram, so you can find me in all 3 of those areas.
Andrea, thank you so much for being here today. This was so timely. And we can talk more offline, but this was so timely for me, and the lessons were so poignant. And this is part of what brings me joy, conversations like this. So thank you for what you do. And thank you again for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed our time together.
Well, that's a wrap on my discussion with Andrea today. I hope you found our conversation both valuable and inspiring. As a reminder, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The show is also available on any other podcast platform you enjoy. Until next time, show up, be mindful of how you lead, and be brave.